Welcome back to Depictions Media Radio. And next up, we're going to listen to an update on the flooding in British Columbia. Effective as of today, the Canadian Red Cross is providing continued emergency support services to evacuees and those impacted by the floods and extreme weather conditions in British Columbia. Mike Farnworth and Rob Fleming are going to be announcing road closures and travel advisories for those who are looking to travel for the holidays coming up. You may want to rethink some of that and find alternative plans to join family and friends. They're asking that one, as a quote, Rob Fleming says, you may want to make sure you have a good vehicle and a very experienced driver if you plan to go on the roads for the holidays. So they are working feverishly, and of course Mike Farnsworth and Rob Fleming want to offer their thanks to all those workers who are working through the clock to reopen the roads and to make the roads safe and travelable again for everyone. So let's listen to what they actually.
And on the Coquihalla Highway. Today we have Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Rob Fleming, also from that ministry, Regional Executive Director Southern Interior Paula Cousins, and Minister of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries Lana Popham. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. At the conclusion of the updates, you will be limited to one question and one follow-up. With that, over to Minister Farnworth.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm honored to be here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. I want to start out by saying how proud I am of the strength and resilience of the people of this province. The past weeks have been difficult, but we're making headway in our recovery. As promised, Minister Fleming will be providing an update on the status of our highways. Crews have made incredible progress repairing some of the routes affected by flooding and slide damage. More information on that coming in a moment. But I want to reiterate our gratitude to our work crews for their tireless efforts and ingenuity in very challenging circumstances. On Monday, Minister Fleming, Minister Popham, and myself met with the federal and provincial ministers' working group to outline the progress we're making on the flood recovery. We've discussed what additional supports are needed at the local level and in First Nations, and how the federal government can continue to ensure British Columbians are covered. We also discussed the commitment to build back from these extreme weather events in a way that better protects British Columbians from future climate events and creates cleaner and healthier communities. Reflecting our shared commitment to the 4 pillars of emergency management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And yesterday, as part of their economic update, the federal government announced an initial provision of $5 billion. These initial funds are earmarked to cover their disaster financial assistance arrangement responsibilities and other yet-to-be-determined costs. This is a historic level of funding reflecting the extreme nature of the disaster and the commitment of the federal government to be true partners in this recovery. And officials next steps in the weeks ahead. Assessing the full costs of rebuilding will be an ongoing process, and it will be some time before both estimated and final costs can be determined. But having toured the impacted areas, seeing the damage firsthand, I can say that it will be significant. As I said earlier, British Columbians have been through a lot, and governments at all levels will continue to provide support. The process of recovering and rebuilding is underway. While it will take time, we will get there. Our government continues to support everyone who's been evacuated. To date, $12.4 million has been dispersed to evacuees by the Red Cross through a variety of channels. And as previously mentioned, starting today, the Red Cross will be providing the ongoing emergency support services to evacuees impacted by the recent floods and extreme weather. I know most evacuees have been in contact with the Red Cross in the last few days. But if you are still under evacuation order and in need of emergency support services and have not yet been in touch, please connect with the Red Cross by phone or in person to ensure ongoing supports will continue. You can reach them by calling 1-800-863-6582 between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The Red Cross also has teams available at reception and resiliency centres and commercial lodging, as well as mobile sites. You can find a list of these locations by visiting redcross.ca. I want to say thank you once again to British Columbians for keeping themselves and their neighbours safe, and all workers and volunteers who've been engaged in the tireless efforts to respond to and recover from these storms. While the recovery phase of this event is just getting going and there's still much to do, we're making progress every day, and we will get through this together. Lastly, but just as importantly, I want to thank the First Nations and local government leaders who have been vital in keeping our communities together, and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure crews, Emergency Management BC staff, and the many volunteers and public safety partners who have been working around the clock to get us back on our feet. We all owe them a very big thank you. And with that, I'll pass this update over to Minister Fleming.
Thank you so much, Minister Farnworth, and good afternoon. Today I'll be providing you with an update on what may well be one of the most remarkable engineering feats in recent memory in the province of British Columbia, a story of highway engineering and reconstruction that is unfolding on a day-by-day basis. I'm referring to the round-the-clock work to get the Coquihalla Highway back in operation after it was heavily damaged in that historic storm just 31 days ago. As British Columbians know by now, over 20 separate sites along the corridor were severely impacted, including sections of the roadway that completely collapsed and multiple bridges that also collapsed. As I've outlined before, the response by our maintenance contractors, our subcontractors, our engineers to get the Coquihalla Highway open is as unprecedented as the storms that damaged it in the first place. Working around the clock in very challenging conditions, crews have been quickly completing repair work. This will allow traffic to once again move along the Highway 5 corridor while the permanent repairs that are planned and carried out as we build back better are undertaken. But today I am very pleased to announce that the Coquihalla will reopen to essential traffic no later than the end of day on Monday, December the 20th. The exact time of day will be determined over the next few days as we complete some final pieces of work that are needed for that reopening to get completed, including some paving. The vehicles authorized to use the Coquihalla will be commercial trucks and intercity buses. This will help allow for the safe transportation of goods and services to people and communities across the province. And I want to now take the time to introduce Paula Cousins, who's our Executive Director for the Southern Interior Region. She's going to walk us through some of the technical details of the work, the remarkable work that's taken place along that corridor. She was out on the Coquihalla on Friday with some members of the media. She has a further update today. She's helped lead the teams that completed this amazing task, and I'm so proud of her work and her team's work. And I'll turn it over to you now, Paula.
Thank you, Minister, and good day, everyone. I'm very pleased to speak about the work that's been completed so far on reopening the Coquihalla. Before I go into details, I really would like to echo Minister Fleming's gratitude for all the people who have worked tirelessly to get us here today, including the ministry team, contractors, and every individual who's contributed. The Coquihalla Highway between Hope and Merritt experienced damage or washouts along 130 kilometers of the corridor during the November 14th and 15th atmospheric river event. Damage included 14 sites where lanes were completely wiped out or significantly undermined, 7 impacted bridge structures where spans collapsed or were compromised by scour and erosion, and 5 debris flow events. The past month has been a massive mobilization of people and equipment. Our contractors quickly set to work with ministry engineers, project managers, and operations staff to assess the damage and formulate a plan for getting the Coque functional again. To date, these massive collaborative efforts have resulted in a highway corridor that will be ready to support essential commercial travel by Monday. Our efforts have included over 200 pieces of equipment working, over 300 people working around the clock. We've moved over 400,000 cubic meters of fill, and that's equivalent to lining up dump trucks all the way from Hope to Kamloops, bumper to bumper. And we've blasted over 130,000 cubic meters of rock, which is enough to fill over 50 Olympic-sized swimming pools. A few key factors have accelerated our response and contributed to the significant advancement of our schedule. We immediately activated equipment and crews following this event, and that quickly enabled us to achieve access to cut-off sections, getting crews working at multiple sites. Just last week, we were able to get across Carolyn Bridge in the south and Bottletop Bridge in the north, which allowed us to rapidly accelerate work across the corridor. We've generally had favorable weather conditions for this mountain pass, and the complete dedication of everyone involved with the response has been nothing short of heroic. Throughout it all, safety remained our highest priority, and we're proud to say that there have been no safety-related incidents. I'll now walk through a few of the key sites just to show the progress we've made to get temporary access restored. This is what the Othello area looked like right after the event. The entire southbound lanes were eroded, along with portions of the northbound fast lane. And now we have 2 lanes reestablished, and the bank has been armored and protected. These are the Jessica bridges right after the event, and as you can see, both bridge approaches were wiped out. And these are the Jessica bridges now. Crews have constructed a lock block wall and installed a temporary span. And while work will continue after we open, access in the southbound direction will be complete by Monday's opening. At Juliet, a southbound span collapsed and the northbound bridge was significantly undermined. And now we've armored the embankment, secured the abutment, and the northbound structure is ready to receive traffic. 3 spans collapsed at the Bottletop Bridge, and a section of the road was also washed away. And over the past month, we've installed a temporary span to provide access over the southbound lanes and paved the approach. Hundreds of meters of southbound lanes were washed out at Murray Flats, and the northbound fast lane was also partially eroded. And this is what it looks like now. We're armoring and rebuilding the southbound lanes, which will be ready to open on Monday. And work continues on further armoring and rebuilding the northbound lanes to open that segment to 4 lanes in the weeks following the initial opening. At Mine Creek, 4 separate locations were washed away. And this week we're installing bigger culverts to increase the drainage capacity, and work is on track to have this section of the highway reestablished to 4 lanes by Monday. So in summary, and as Minister Fleming said, a lot of work has been done to get the highway ready to receive commercial traffic again. We still have a lot to do, and work will be continuing in the coming weeks while commercial traffic begins moving through the corridor. And while we are thrilled to reopen the Coquihalla Highway, it is not the Coquihalla as we know it. When open, some sections will be open to 2-lane traffic only, with 1 lane in each direction. There will be several speed reductions and crossovers along the route, and we anticipate that it will take up to an additional 45 minutes to get through this segment in optimal weather conditions. Given the priority to get this route open, there are a few items that we want to ensure those using the route are prepared for. There will be no power. BC Hydro is working hard to restore service, but it will not be done in time for Monday. So until power is restored, commercial drivers can expect limited lighting in the snow sheds and at brake checks and chain-up areas using generators. The variable speed system will not be in service. There will be portable toilets available, but not the full service washrooms. There will be a reduced cell coverage along the route, and electronic vehicle charging stations will not be functional. On the operating front, commercial drivers can expect reduced speed limits along the corridor. It'll be 100 kilometers an hour in 4-lane sections and 60 kilometers an hour in crossovers in 2-lane sections. There will be increased chain-up requirements, increased winter maintenance and monitoring, and increased CVSE enforcement. So in closing, we've done everything possible to restore access to this corridor, but keeping it open will require everyone to do their part, including carrying proper chains and using them when the chain-up lights are on, following the posted speeds, driving to conditions, and avoiding passing in the two-lane sections and crossovers. A map is being produced to show the lane reductions and changes to the corridor, and it will be posted to our social media accounts prior to the corridor reopening. And at that, I'll pass it back to Minister Fleming.
Great. Thank you so much, Paula. And as you can see, the pace of repair has been absolutely staggering. A lot has even changed since I was on site just 5 days ago, and we will need the next few days to complete some additional work, paving sections of the highway. But again, an incredible testament to the workers of this province who've been involved in repairing the Coquihalla. This is a significant milestone for our supply chains that will have economic benefits for all British Columbians who've seen supply chain interruptions and indeed for our connection to the rest of the country. Just want to reiterate what Paula said, though. It won't be traffic as usual until the permanent repairs can happen. We'll have more information about that in the new year. But what you can see what we will gain is a much more efficient and safer highway for the majority of semi-trucks to be on the number 5, and this will allow traffic volumes on Highway 3 to return to more normal volumes. So I want to talk a little bit about Highway 3. When the Coquihalla does reopen, we will remove the essential travel designation for Highway 3 about 24 hours later. So Coquihalla opening on Monday, time to be confirmed. 24 hours later, Highway 3, the essential travel restrictions will be lifted. And while this increased mobility is clearly good news, we're advising people to use extreme caution on Highway 3. It's a safe route as long as people are prepared, responsible, and drive to the conditions, but it's a mountainous route. It has steep grades, it has winding curves, and the weather and road conditions can change quite quickly. We're going to continue to have enhanced winter maintenance, improved signage, and additional police and CVSE enforcement along the number 3. People who are not experienced with winter driving in the mountains are encouraged to use alternatives, though. I want to be clear about that. If they're traveling between the Lower Mainland and the interior, the airlines have put on extra flights, capped the prices. Intercity buses will be using the Coquihalla as of Monday the 20th, so there are other options besides driving the number 3 for those who have never really driven in winter conditions. For those of you who do need to drive, you must have good winter tires. You should pack food and blankets, have a fully charged cell phone, take some of those precautions, and be prepared to be patient. Slow down, drive carefully, and drive to the road conditions. I want to just move to the Highway 99 now because it's been under essential orders. When the Coquihalla reopens, the section of 99 that's been restricted between Pemberton and Lillooet will also be open to general travel. So this will occur a day sooner than Highway 3. Commercial vehicles still not allowed on the 99 on that part of the route. But again, the same cautions apply here as they do on Highway 3. People need to ensure that they and their vehicles are prepared for winter conditions. Vehicles larger than a cube truck will still be banned between Pemberton and Lillooet, and this ban will remain in effect until we get temporary repairs completed on Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon, which will then give large trucks a more direct route to the north part of the province. Highway 1 repairs through the Fraser Canyon are continuing. There are 18 impacted sites between Hope and Spence's Bridge. Currently, 12 of those sites have been opened or have a detour in place. Work is continuing on 4 sites where significant damage occurred. We're still holding to the timeline that Minister Farnworth and I announced at an earlier briefing that by mid-January we expect Highway 1 to be reopened. There will be some single-lane sections and there will be slower speeds to accommodate the temporary works and the ongoing construction. Just a very brief update on Highway 8 as well. This was heavily damaged. We are now working to clear and repair 5 sites between the Naquala Recreation Site and the Shakin Indian Reserve. First Nations cultural and archaeological monitors are working at all 5 of these locations. It's good news that BC Hydro has restored power to residents between Merritt and Shakin on the north side, with work continuing to fully restore power throughout the area. We don't have an estimated date of reopening yet for Highway 8. It will take significant time to repair the very extensive damage. Let me just say in closing that having an opening day for the Coquihalla close at hand is a turning point for our province and our recovery efforts from these historic, devastating storms. And I again want to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation for all of those who've gotten us to this point. The companies, the trade unions, the engineers, the suppliers, the workers who've been on the ground working day and night, literally around the clock. The work you have done has been inspiring and very selfless and dedicated on behalf of all the rest of the British Columbians that you're serving. And I also want to thank the people of this province who've been patient, they've been adaptable, they've been understandable as we've worked our way back. A huge thank you to them, and I'd like to invite my colleague, Agriculture Minister Lana Popham, to provide her update. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. On the agricultural side, we have been turning our mind to cleanup and recovery. As of yesterday, we are down to about 30 farms that are still in the evacuation order zone. This is coming down from over 1,000, and so that's moving in the right direction. As people return to their farms and their homes, there's been some very difficult days for folks. The destruction that's happened is significant, and they're trying to figure out how to move forward at this time, and our thoughts are with them. The process of cleaning farms is a difficult one. It's almost a question of where do you start. Everything is covered in a really bad mud right now, and so just being able to have access to clean water to wash away that debris is challenging for these folks. Also, the disposal of animal mortalities has improved. Last week was a big week for that, and that's been in partnership with our ministry, with industry associations and private businesses, and I'd like to thank everyone taking part in that very difficult situation, but we are making progress there. There are plans to assess the conditions of the soil in the areas that have been flooded, and we'll be implementing those assessments in the coming weeks. This is going to be really important as farmers are going to have to make decisions about this coming growing season, what needs to be replanted, what can be planted, and how does the soil have to be remediated. This is all in question for many folks right now, and it's quite overwhelming. But as we see those assessments come back, we'll have paths forward for folks to move ahead. I think the tone out there from farmers is that they just want to get back to work as soon as possible. And so part of that is assessing the damage and being able to give them the financial supports that they need to rebuild. The tour that I had with Federal Minister Bibeau last Friday was critically important as we kind of tie down the final details on our agri-recovery program that's being developed. One thing I think that was very important for Minister Bibeau to see is that we've got a situation from one end of the spectrum to the other. So there's chicken farmers right now in the Sumas Prairie that are back into production almost fully. They've hobbled together some of their barns, and they're making it work. To the other end of the spectrum, where we see large-scale vegetable production that is absolutely, in some cases, still under a lot of water and, of course, this layer of mud. And so every farm is going to be a different situation, and we want to make sure that nobody's falling through the cracks as we develop this program. So having these on-the-ground visits, it's critically important. We are having cross-sectoral roundtables to make sure also we don't leave anybody out. I think next Monday we're having one with the blueberry industry, who's very concerned about their plants and the state of their plants right now. I know that some blueberry plants, if they're older, they have a better chance of surviving, but we have a lot of new plantings that won't make it. And so it'll be, I have had many conversations with blueberry farmers and the processors, but to be able to have a roundtable with them on Monday is going to be able to give them some good information on what they need to prepare as they move forward as far as applications to different programs. But also, you know, there might be some information that we don't know yet that we're really eager to find out from them. And so I'm looking forward to that meeting. I'm going to be back out in the Fraser Valley this week. I'm going to be touring a vegetable farm, one of the land-based fish farms that was destroyed, and also a blueberry processing plant that is quite a high-tech plant and unfortunately has had water damage in some of its equipment. And so that'll allow us to also have a better look at some of the processing that's been damaged out there, which is significant. We want to make sure right now that we're addressing things that are urgent, and one of the things that continues to be urgent is being able to feed the livestock. We'll have more details in the days ahead, but we will be releasing 2 programs that will ease up on the burden of livestock producers right now as they look towards the winter with limited feed. I can say that we've secured $1 million in funding to help fill this immediate need of hay and forage. The funding, of course, is for emergency feed and those who are in the immediate, for those in the immediate term. We're trying to avoid any animal welfare issues, and so as soon as that application is available, we'll be making sure that folks who need it will get it into their hands. We are working closely with the BC Forage Council and the BC Cattlemen's Association to make sure that this information gets disseminated as much as possible. We know that there's folks up in the Merritt area that are really struggling with the urgency of this feed, and so the conversations with them, I can say that we are able to secure feed and we will be able to move it in there, but we'll need to reach out to them and get them to fill out some of those applications, but we'll be working with them. What I can say to all farmers right now that have been affected by floods, I can't tell you how important it is right now to be holding on to any receipts, recording any expenses that you've incurred since the floods, and making sure that you've got the records. And even a photo journal would help. So as these agri-recovery applications come forward, we're going to need all the information that you've gathered since those floods happened. So that's probably the best way that you can be prepared for that coming up in the next few weeks. Finally, I'll just finish off by talking about the resiliency of our BC farmers. It continues to just amaze me. We're already seeing farmers restarting production as in the dairy industry. So 48 out of 60 dairy farms in the Fraser Valley have resumed production, which means that milk production, milk supply is at 95% of normal. I'd like to tell you quickly about Richard Bosma and his family, who have a dairy out on the Sumas Prairie in the valley. They farm about 200 dairy cows, and they've been operating in the valley for most of their lives. When the floods began, they started to move their cows out. There was about 100 moved before they had to take a break, which left about 100 cows left in the barns. When Richard returned the next day, he didn't know if he should expect them to be dead or alive, but they had survived, so the rescue continued. And those cows continued to be trailered out over the day and brought to buddy farms in the area. One of the things that was in the back of Richard's mind was that he knew that there was one cow that was ready to calf, but the urgency was to move all of the cows as soon as possible, so he couldn't focus in on that one cow. As the cows were placed on the buddy farms in the following hours, that particular cow arrived onto its host farm, immediately laid down, and had a baby heifer calf. And at that point, volunteers started to attend to the health of that calf. Richard and his family named her Miracle, and she'll be returning home on Saturday to her home farm. I asked Richard what it felt like not to have any of those animals in his barns. His barns are empty at the moment. And he said he's never really had a moment like that, and how overwhelming it's going to be when those animals start to arrive back this week. So we wish them luck with that. The buddy farm system made all the difference in the dairy industry during the disaster. A lot of farmers put their community needs ahead of their own needs, and that means they were sharing feed. And so that's another issue that we're going to have to address, is making sure those dairy farmers can get through the winter. All of this is the hope that we need as our farmers continue to recover. We need to continue to support them and to show our gratitude for providing food to us, the food that we put on all of our tables. And one of the best ways that you can do that right now is to buy BC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A reminder to media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You'll be limited to one question and one follow-up. Our first question today comes from Richard Zussman, Global News.
Minister Fleming, just trying to get a better sense of what Highway 3 is going to look like. What are you going to be looking at over those 24 hours once the Coquihalla reopens? And what sort of travel? Like, is this a message to anyone to say, okay, now you can get on the 3 and travel, to and from the interior for Metro Vancouver? Is there any additional guidance around that?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So, as I mentioned, one of the reasons why we'll stagger the lifting of essential travel restrictions on the number 3 about 24 hours after we open up the number 5 is to give the trucking industry and various routes and deliveries that they've booked a period of time to migrate back to the number 5, because we want the 5 to be the overwhelming commercial truck route for the province. It'll be much faster for them, more direct. That's where drivers want to be. So I expect the industry, and we've already communicated with the BC Trucking Association and others in the industry, that this is our plan going forward. So, but just making sure that, immediately we don't have the mixing of large commercial semis with passenger vehicles on day one. So we'll give a day's adjustment period there, and also just do additional inspections on the road. And we're going to have enhanced RCMP enforcement and checkpoints on both the Highway 3 and the 5, so mobilizing some additional resources as well. My advice, though, to the traveling public is while this is good news in terms of mobility, we have to be mindful of a number of things. And I talked about Highway 3 being a tough highway to traverse for passenger vehicles in winter conditions. It's steep, it's windy. There's work crews out there, and we hope that the volumes are not excessive, and we hope that British Columbians, we expect British Columbians, because we've been in this pandemic now for more than 18 months. While there's no essential travel orders restrictions as it relates to the pandemic at this point, people have to be paying attention to public health advice a lot, and holiday gatherings in the fourth wave, and not traveling if not needed to. I know a number of people have already adjusted their travel plans because of the storm event and the restricted access to our highways. You should maybe stick with the plans that you had to make since November 15th when the province changed in that regard. And as I said, pay attention to public health advice that's coming on a daily basis as the Omicron variant is appearing in clusters in different parts of the province.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
Minister, I think you alluded to this. I know commercial trucks and essential vehicles will be making their decisions, but will there still be commercial vehicles will be allowed to go on both the Coquihalla or Highway 3 once the Coquihalla is reopened, or will the advice be to send everything on the Coquihalla commercially and not on Highway 3?
Yes, trucks will still be able to use the 3 because there's a number of communities where they're making deliveries there. But the number 3 typically experiences a significantly, vastly lower volume of commercial trucks than the number 5. So if we've been experiencing a total flow of about 3,000 trucks on the number 3, I would expect perhaps 85-90% of that to use the Coquihalla. That's certainly what the trucking industry is expecting. So you'll see it go from 3,000 a day to perhaps just a couple hundred on the Hope Princeton Highway.
Next question, we go to Mira Baines, CBC.
Okay. This question is for Minister Fleming. When can we expect some updates on the financial costs of the infrastructure repair work? And is there any timeline on when the Coquihalla might be reopened to all traffic, like even a rough estimate, spring or summer?
Yeah, let me start with the second question first. The important thing about reopening the 5, and Paula in the briefing there talked about the speed limit, so it will be free-flowing and parts of the highway are in good condition, 100 kilometer an hour speed limits, but in the areas that have been damaged or where there's lane constrictions, it will be 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. We're going to be monitoring this for performance, for volumes. This is an extremely welcome development for our supply chains and everybody that depends on them, all the employment and the goods and services that can get throughout communities in our economy. But the performance monitoring of how the number 5 performs will determine what restrictions will lift and when. So I can't answer that today. On the cost of the repairs, we're still working on that. We're still, it's determined by, design and the engineering advice of what Build Back Better looks like. We've had some excellent discussions with our supply chain working group, which is Transport Canada, my ministry, and the private sector and everybody involved in goods movement in BC. We've got a really good understanding from the federal government on the damage that we've sustained, and they've pledged their support. So we'll have those sorts of things in the new year, but for now, we're, as I said before, we're not sparing resources. We've thrown everything we've had at this, 300 workers working around the clock, 200 pieces of heavy equipment on the Coquihalla. I mean, there's a huge economic cost every day that our infrastructure is down and not performing and supply chains are interrupted. So we did this because British Columbians were cut off from one another, but there's also economic reasons we wanted to have this restored as quickly as possible.
Mira, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, Minister, I'm just wondering about the timeline for Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon. You said, it's still mid-January. Could we see that work move along quickly like the Coquihalla? Is there a possibility that it could be open earlier than that?
That's the timeline we have right now. That hasn't changed. We've got a lot of work crews there. It's very similar to the Coquihalla effort. Damage very extensive as well. 12 sites are sort of remediated, or side routes are available to connect, but the route is not likely to be able to, from one end of it to the other through the Fraser Canyon, be able to be continuous until mid-January. But so there are about 5 active sites, 12 completed or near completed, 5 active sites that need to be worked on in the next few weeks to get us to mid-January.
Next question, Victor Kaiser, Radio NL.
Hi, Minister Fleming. Thanks for doing this. I just wanted to, double check that when the Coquihalla does open, potentially, will there be, first of all, potential roadblocks just keeping non-essential vehicles away? And also, I guess it'll be at Merritt and at Hope, really. And also, how confident are you, perhaps, in the repairs that they've been done once they see that volume of traffic, as you mentioned, they'll be able to hold up, given how notorious the Coke is in winter months?
Yeah, thank you for that. So you're exactly right. There will be checkpoints at both the Hope and Merritt ends to the Coquihalla to make sure that it's for essential purposes only, that the orders are being enforced. We'll have CVSE enhanced enforcement. There'll be a big ministry presence on the Highway 5 corridor and the Highway 3 corridor. We will have enhanced road maintenance contractors as well in plowing and making sure that the conditions on the road are cleared up when we have weather events. The other part of your question was, sorry, remind me again.
It was on just making sure
yes.
that how confident.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Well, as you saw in the pictures that Paula Cousins shared from the ministry, the amount of armoring and reinforcement and the engineered solutions. These are temporary fixes, but they're very strong and very fortified. And we had no interruptions, even as supply chains were generally strained in the province. We had no supply interruptions around the kind of material that we needed for this rebuild. So, quite frankly, the dynamic was one that we can all be proud of. It was contractors, moving equipment, all hands on deck approach. People with experience in road builders, careers in road building, wanting to work on this project and to get it done. I don't think it would be realistic before Christmas, but because we enhanced the schedule, made it scheduled shifts to be around the clock, those workers are going to get some well-deserved days off after December 20th when we get it reopened, but they've worked to make it safe and strong, and it will be engineered to be a good temporary fix on all the damaged areas.
Victor, do you have a follow-up?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you very much. For the next question, we go to Barbara Roden, Ashcroft Journal.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can do, yes.
We can. Please go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you. This is a follow-up about the Highway 1 question. I think everyone understands the need to get the Coquihalla up and running as a vital communications chain. But Cannot some of that equipment and manpower be switched over to Highway 1, bearing in mind that hundreds of people live along that corridor who are now effectively cut off, and it's a several hours trip over bad roads in winter to get to necessary things like medical treatment, for example. So is there any chance that that mid-January date can be moved forward?
Well, I hope so. I can't do that today, but I can tell you that the collaboration between different crews working on different parts of our damaged highway system is seamless. So we've had many jobs going on in many different affected parts of the province all at once. So it's not the case that we didn't mobilize on Highway 1 in order to mobilize on Highway 5. We mobilized for both of those highways, number 8 as well, and number 99, and the number 1 on Vancouver Island in the early aftermath of the storm. So it's been all available labor, companies, road maintenance contractors. Everybody has been thrown into the fight at all the sites that were damaged after the storm event.
Barbara, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, this is regarding sort of the Highway 8 question and the people in Spence's Bridge particularly and along that stretch of highway. This is the second time this year that they've been evacuated, this time for heaven knows how long. And I know that Minister Farnworth visited the area last week, and what I'm hearing from people in Spence's Bridge is that it would mean a lot to them, to their stress levels, their mental health levels, because they are at the breaking point. They would love to see someone from the province actually come to the community, announced, and speak with them and just reassure them that they're not forgotten. Would there be any plans for something like that, a visit?
We have been out in different parts of the province visiting the affected communities. We will be continuing to do that. But what I can tell you is no part of the province is being forgotten. No community is being forgotten. That's why the trip out there was initially it was delayed. We went the next day. We managed to get as far as Hope. Again, weather was almost going to end the trip. But we felt it was critical to get out to Highway 8 and communities along there that we ended up taking the route up through Harrison, coming out the back. It did cut short the trip, but I can tell you that absolutely no community is being forgotten. That's why we have the joint working group with the federal government that has announced the $5 billion that was announced by the federal government yesterday in terms of recovery. It's why we have extended the supports in place for communities where people have been evacuated to continue into the spring, and today that's taken over by the Red Cross. So that all that significant work ensuring that the province has the back of communities is absolutely going to continue.
Next question, Mike Hager, Globe and Mail.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I am curious if Mr. Farnworth can explain how much of the federal aid will go toward helping people whose homes were destroyed. Do you have a sense of kind of the damage to housing and how that may affect affordability in these communities?
So I can make a couple of points around that. So the federal government made the announcement yesterday. We have the joint committee that is meeting and working very cooperatively to deal with the critical issues that are facing people who have been evacuated. My officials and will be meeting with federal officials now to determine the specific details and specific issues that may need to be worked out over the next few weeks, ensuring alignment of the province's disaster financial assistance with the federal disaster financial assistance arrangement. And we all recognize the need that there needs to be flexibility. So I've been really pleased about that. At the same time, the rapid and damage assessment on communities and neighborhoods that have been and properties that have been evacuated or were evacuated is underway, and that assessment of those properties is going to help inform the understanding of just how much the damage is and the potential costs around that. That does take some time, but what I can tell you is that significant work has already been underway, particularly in the Merritt area, as well as in Princeton, and significant work has already been accomplished in Abbotsford, with some more still to do.
Do you have a follow-up, Mike?
Yes, and Mr. Fleming, with Highway 3 reopening to all traffic next week, hopefully, what is the message you're sending to people who want to travel within BC for the holidays?
Yeah, the message is think very carefully about that for two reasons. These highways have been damaged. We're in winter conditions, which are tough driving conditions on their own.